Okay, here we have a quick Easter project. This is going to be a station bike. I've managed to pick it up cheap locally on a Facebook marketplace. It's a 1993 Raleigh Apex mountain bike. It's got a nice Gervin flexi stem. Never used one of those before, so it'll be interesting to see what that's like. It's made out of a Reynolds K2 chromoly tube set. And what I'm going to do is try and see if I can get this up and together pretty quickly. First things first, I'm going to take off all the accessories. They may not go back on, but let's see what we've got first. Got a lovely froggy bell. I may actually put that on, help deter people from stealing it from outside the station. A working front light. A crud catcher type mud catcher at the front. An elite water bottle holder. The matching mudguard at the back that has a homemade bracket attached to it for a lamp. The homemade bracket will definitely come off. That's it for accessories, so let's see what it looks like without it. Okay, here we are with all the accessories removed, looking much more like a 1990s mountain bike, an early 90s one at that. What am I going to do next? Well, as always, the crucial thing when picking up a cheap bike to use is, does the seat post move freely? So what I'm going to do is take that out and grease it if it comes out. Let's hope she does. Okay, the good news is that the seat post wasn't stuck. Turns out it's a chromo one, which seems to be what Raleigh chose to fit in most of the early 90s. I suspect they were hoping to avoid, on bikes that tend to get used in wet and mud, any sort of galvanic corrosion sealing the seat post into the tube. It's a 27mm one, and I've set it roughly to the height that I would require. I can fine tune that when it's off the stand. So what am I going to do next? Well, I'm having a look at the cockpit next. The grips are a little bit tired, but for a bike that's to get me to the station, I might keep them on. However, the brake levers and gear shifters are quite dirty, and they're not shifting as smoothly as I'd like. So I think what I'm going to do first is take off the grips, take off the levers and gear changes, and see if I can get them working a bit smoother by just giving them a good clean. So I took a break to have a bit of breakfast and have a think about my next steps. And what I've decided is that I'm not going to keep the foam grips. I initially thought I would, but I realised if I come back on the train to find that I've got wet and cold grips to hold on to, that won't be very pleasant. So I'll see if I can find a rubber set for that. I've also looked a bit more at the cabling. As you can see from the brake cable here, it's not very good. And I figure if I've got the cables in my supplies, I really ought to change the brake and particularly the gear cables, because that may well help the shifting as well as cleaning the shifters. Okay, so we've now rapidly moved towards a full headset re-grease and rebuild. I've been cleaning things off and realising that we have a very notchy headset. Also be a good time to check to make sure that that Gervin flex stem isn't seized into the head post. Well, that's good news. It came out very easily. Even though there's very little sign of grease on that alloy steerer tube, there's no sign of galvanic corrosion or anything nasty going on in there. I've never used or taken apart a Gervin flex stem before. It was a bit dirty and a little bit stiff, so I thought I'd take it apart, give everything a bit of a clean and a polish before putting it back. Okay, drivetrain next, and I've just measured the chain and it is over 100% warm. clearly been being used for a long time, so I'll have to factor in a new chain. Probably should check all the teeth on the front and the back, but this is a budget build for a station bike, so I'm not going to replace those just yet. Okay, so maybe more of a full rebuild than a quick sort out. Well, here's as far as we've got after 2 days, not all day, just 2 part days of tearing it apart, cleaning it off and putting it back together again. I had hoped to be a bit further along the lines, but it turned out that the rear brakes needed taking off, cleaning and re-greasing because they weren't springing back into position. Also turned out that there was a huge amount of grease and grime on the chain rings and particularly the rear cassette, which was actually loose, so I had to tighten that up. I don't know if you can see, but it's still quite grimy in there, so I may have to put it through the ultrasonic cleaner at some point. The pedals will need rebuilding, and I think I probably want to grease the bearings in the hubs at some point. I'm probably going to go for some 1.5 inch road tyres, as this will be mainly going to and from the station. And if you look at the front tyre, there's some quite bad cracking in there as well. So, all things said, I'm quite pleased with how far I've got. The frame's cleaned up nicely, polished up nicely. I've popped down to the local Decathlon, the only place I could find open today on Easter Monday. Picked up a new chain because the one that was on it was absolutely knackered. I suspect it may be 30 years old in the original chain. Got a set of brake pads for the front and a set of grips to go on it, so we should be okay for a bit more work next time I get a chance.